Hello, mathematicians. Today, what I want to go over with you is the properties of multiplication. What we find out in multiplication is that there are 5 properties of multiplication. There's the associative property of multiplication, commutative property of multiplication, identity property of multiplication, distributive property of multiplication, and the zero property of multiplication. What I want to do today is go over each of these and show what they look like so that you can have an understanding of what they are and how they can help you solve multiplication questions. So first, let's look at the associative property of multiplication. The associative property of multiplication states that the grouping of factors in a multiplication equation can be changed without changing the product. In simpler terms, when multiplying 3 or more numbers, you can change the order in which you multiply them and still get the same answer. Here's an example. In this first question, I have 5 times 4 times 6. And it's going to be the same as 5 times 4 times 6. As we multiply those out, we get 5 times 24 and 20 times 6. And 5 times 24 is 120, and 20 times 6 is also 120. So no matter how we arrange and group the factors, we still get the same answers in a multiplication question. This also works in addition, by the way, as well. Next, we have the identity property of multiplication. And this one's fairly simple. The identity property of multiplication states that any number multiplied by 1 equals the original number. Again, in simpler terms, when you multiply a number by 1, it stays the same. This property helps us understand how multiplication works and shows us that multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value of a number. So 9 times 1 is 9. Next, we have the commutative property of multiplication. The commutative property of multiplication is a math rule that says changing the order of the numbers being multiplied doesn't change the product. For example, 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. And again, I have another example right here. I have 3 times 7 and 7 times 3. 3 times 7 is 21, and 7 times 3 is also 21. So no matter what order the factors are, it stays the same. Again, that also works for addition as well. Next, we have the distributive property of multiplication. Now, this looks a couple of different ways, but it's actually the same thing, but I'm going to show you both. The distributive property of multiplication states that when you multiply a number by the sum of 2 or more other numbers, you can multiply each of those numbers separately and add the products together. For example, in the expression a times b plus c, you can distribute the a to both b and c by multiplying a times b and a times c and then add the results together. For example, 3 times 2 plus 9 is the same thing as 3 times 2 and 3 times 9. So we're adding it to those two numbers. So that would be 3 times 11 in this question, or it would be 6 plus 27. In both those problems, we get 33. Now, this also can look another way. Sometimes you don't start with this broken up. You may start with just 2 factors, 6 times 7. But you may not know your 7s yet. So you may decide to break that 7 up into 5 plus 2. And then we go back and do the exact same thing. 6 times 5 and 6 times 2. 6 times 5 is 30 and 6 times 2 is 12. If I add those together, I get the answer of 6 times 7, which is 42. And we often see this done in arrays, but it works with any number you may not know those timetables for. And last, we have the zero property of multiplication. The zero property of multiplication states that when any number is multiplied by 0, the result is always 0. So 12 times 0, it's 0. And that is the 5 different properties of multiplication. Again, I just wanted to go over those real quick to make sure we understood what they are and how they can help us solve multiplication questions. Hope it helps. Have the best day.